Hello all, and welcome to another After Hours review. This is Chris once again, and folks, it's that time of year. December. The month of family gatherings, awesome holiday movies, and frantic last-minute shopping due to procrastination. But if there's one thing that ties the season together for me personally, it's finally buying that one gaming-related item I've been looking forward to all year. And in this case, it's the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. Yes, it's finally here. Or at least it has been since the end of September. But it's here, I managed to pick one up just in time for the holidays, and damn, the nostalgia is already hitting me hard. As a 90s kid, some of my earliest gaming memories were of the 16-bit era, and while my Super Nintendo experiences were mostly limited to emulators, well, we were a Genesis family at the time, I can't stress enough how big of an impact that era left on me. So naturally, I'm a little more excited getting into this review than the previous one. However, this Super Nintendo is part of the Classics line of consoles, and if you've seen my NES mini review, you'll remember that I noted quite a bit of flaws with that console. I ultimately gave it a recommendation, but there was plenty of room for improvement that I hoped would be met with this next installment. So, does the Super Nintendo Classic Edition fare better than its predecessor? Let's find out. Once again, let's start off by checking out the box for this beauty. Like the NES, and you'll be hearing me make that comparison a lot, the cover picture here is reminiscent of the original consoles. Though to be honest, I was never a fan of this pick. I mean, the Super Nintendo on adult carpet? Hell, I can compose that shot in like 5 seconds. Look, there you go. At least the box art for the Nintendo made the system look like some sort of alien VCR coming down from space. But I digress. At the back of the box, we have the full list of games included, shown with pictures of the gameplay and their original box arts. With the Super Nintendo Mini, you'll be getting Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, F-Zero, Super Metroid, Street Fighter II Turbo Hyper Fighting, Super Punch-Out, Super Castlevania IV, Donkey Kong Country, Mega Man X, Kirby Superstar, Final Fantasy III, Kirby's Dream Course, Star Fox, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, Contra 3 The Alien Wars, Secret of Mana, Earthbound, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and finally Star Fox 2, but I'll get back to that specific game later. So 21 games total, 9 less than the NES Mini, but a damn solid collection overall. These titles are some of the best of the Super Nintendo's library, and in a few cases very hard to find at a decent price, so I'm satisfied with what we have here. Now let's take a look at the contents inside. Firstly, the mini Super Nintendo itself, recreated faithfully from the design of the original. The cartridge door is obviously still closed as the games are emulated, and the ports in the back are still only for HDMI and USB cords. By snapping open this jammed as hell door... Come on. Open, you son of a shit. Come on. Freaking asshole. Piece of shit. Son of a... Oh, come on. Hold on. Come on, I almost got you now. You know I got you, you piece of shit. Come on. I got you. Come on. Hey, fucking... Oh. There we go. You get your controller ports, and the reset and power buttons work exactly as they should. So everything works out with the console. Next up, the USB, strangely with no plug this time. An HDMI cable, a few pages of warranty and user agreement information, and a sweet RetroS poster showing off some of the games listed. Playing with superpower indeed. You, my friend, are going to have a nice place on my wall next to your brother. Well, I guess that's everything that comes packaged inside, unless I'm forgetting something. Let me see. Oh, right! 2 freaking controllers! Hot damn. Folks, I gave the Nintendo Mini hell for its controller issues last time, and how impossible it was to find a second one in stores. Now here we are with the Super Nintendo. 2 controllers are packed right in, and it feels good. No more one-player Contra. No more campaign-only playthroughs of Mario Kart. Oh, this is great. If that weren't enough, the controller cords are almost twice as long as the NES this time around. So you can play reasonably comfortably with just the given materials. And as a sweet bonus, the connection type of the controllers is identical to the one for the NES, so you can also bring that two-player goodness back to the Nintendo. How cool is that? If there is one single flaw I can bring up though, it's that the controllers don't have any home or reset button once again, ensuring that, yeah, you're still gonna have to get off your ass to change games or turn the console off. And it's actually worse here than with the Nintendo, seeing as how the controller cords are longer. I mean, I get it. Authenticity with the design is the goal here, for nostalgia's sake. But I'd trade just a teeny bit of that authenticity for comfort. And no, having to constantly hit the reset button on the console ain't comfortable. Still, the controllers are an improvement, which I'm grateful to see, and it feels good. Alright, well, with the contents out of the way, let's see how this baby works in the software department. Like the NES, as the system is booted up, you get your home menu displaying all the games listed with their original box arts. And the music accompanying the menu is appropriately Super Nintendo-esque. Leaving the console idle for a minute or so gives you the demo screen, except this time with Mario and Bizarro Mario? Okay, I know that's supposed to be Luigi, but with the Super Nintendo's more detailed sprites, this palette swap from Super Mario World always looked out of place to me. They couldn't have used a more unique looking sprite of Luigi from Mario All-Stars? Oh right, that game's not here. Well shit. In any case, after a few seconds you get Mario and Luigi picking out games for display footage. But instead of stock demo gameplay, they now choose your saved game data and plaster it on screen for the world to see. It is a nice switch up from last time that reminds you where you left off, but damn if I don't want to remember my many failures before quitting each game. And yeah, you may have noticed that I said your saved game data was picked out for the demo. So yes, save states or suspend points are thankfully back again, with 4 slots for each game. All which can be locked to prevent deletion or unlocked to save new data on. The main difference here is the new rewind feature. With the push of the X button, you can now load up one of your suspend points and watch about 40 seconds of your gameplay prior to the save. Pretty much like the demo screen. Except with the rewind feature, you can pause or skip the footage ahead and back. My favorite part, however, is the ability to jump in and actually play the current game from any point within those 40 seconds. It's a fun way to get through segments in those harder levels, but also tremendously helpful if you ever make a mistake with the suspend points. Like say for example, you saved at a boss room in Mega Man X, but forgot to refill your weapon energy. Well, instead of losing all your lives and starting the whole stage over again to refill it, you can just hit the rewind button on your save state, go back to before the boss room, and grind enemies until you're at 100%. Sure, you can also abuse the feature to cheese through games, but it's a useful tool regardless. Personally, I just use it to watch those hard as shit bosses I beat die over and over again. Well, when you're done screwing around with your save file, you may notice those options at the top of the screen. Truth be told, there's not much different here from the Nintendo Mini, so I'll just go through them briefly. First off, you have your display options to choose how you want to see your gameplay. Of the choices, there's Pixel Perfect mode, 4x3 mode, and the CRT filter. The only new addition is that you can now add frames to the black borders surrounding the picture. There are 12 frames total, and not much to write home about, though I do get a kick out of the ones that change colors based on the in-game environments. Next up are your general settings, with strangely no option for an automatic power off this time, so you can accidentally leave your system on all night and it won't do shit to stop it. Everything else is exactly the same as the NES, so the language changes only affect the menu, the legal notices are lengthy, and once again, no manuals on the actual console. This doesn't bother me quite as much as last time, if only because by the 16-bit era, most games could get their stories across through text and cutscenes. It's still a bummer, but at the end of the day, if you really want the manuals, they are online at least. Now that everything else has been covered, let's finally check out these games. The titles here can be sorted to your liking and are all ready to play from the start, with the sole exception of Star Fox 2. For those not in the know, Star Fox 2 was supposed to be the sequel to 1993's Star Fox, but was canned during the mid-90s. That's not to say though that the game was incomplete. No, Star Fox 2 was fully completed in 1995 with a possible release date set for the following year. However, with the N64 coming out in '96 sporting better 3D graphics, the release was cancelled with the game shelved. There have been a few ROMs leaked since then, but it's now, 22 years later, that Star Fox 2 has been officially released by Nintendo. As I said, Star Fox 2 isn't available to play from the get-go, but the requirement for unlocking it is nothing to worry about. You just have to beat the first stage in the first Star Fox and bam, there you go. So with the game finally released, and if you haven't played it already through the leaked ROMs, you're probably wondering how well the sequel turned out. Well, for a more detailed review, I will be covering this game in the future, but for now, with what little I've played, I will say that there are some neat additions here in the form of multiple characters to play with, a variety of vehicles available for use, and a less linear format for the gameplay. I don't want to spoil too much for those coming into Star Fox 2 fresh or derail this review, so I'll talk more about it at a later time. Back to the games as a whole, the Super Nintendo Mini, as with the NES before it, outputs at 720p, giving these 90s classics the HD upgrade they deserve. Sharp detail and vibrant colors reign here, making the images stand out beautifully. Quality emulation. And while we're on the topic of emulation, I have to point out how well the SNES Classic handles the more complicated games that used enhanced chips in their original releases. From the Super FX chip in titles like Star Fox and Yoshi's Island, to the SA1 chip using the Kirby games in Super Mario RPG, the visual quality is consistent between enhanced and standard games. However, you may notice a few graphical changes here and there. I sure as hell don't remember the background disappearing in this Yoshi's Island stage. Despite the few issues though, everything here looks faithful. That also includes all the occasions of slowdown and choppy, low frame rates from some of the original games, so just a heads up. All the titles play as well as they should, and I haven't noticed any problems with responsiveness in the controllers. Lastly, the audio quality, which is mostly solid. The music and sound effects come through clearly enough, but the SNES games have always sounded a bit muffled to me. The new release is accurate in that regard, but there probably could have been some slight improvements.
Come on! Come on!
And folks, that is the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. A console that I've clearly enjoyed so far, but is it worth the hassle of buying, especially with the higher price tag this time around? Personally, I think so. The SNES does have flaws, don't get me wrong. I definitely would have liked to see a few more games in this collection for one. The lack of such classics as Turtles in Time, Chrono Trigger, and The Adventures of Batman and Robin is disappointing. Now, can you add games through unofficial means? But it's still a bummer that those purchasing the product can't have a more meaty library from the get-go. There are also a few problems from the NES Mini that are still here, such as the lack of a home button on the controllers and not much in the way of features. However, I still consider the Super Nintendo Classic an improvement. Once again, 2 controllers, longer controller cord length, the rewind feature, neat display options, quality emulation and audio, and a library that, while lacking, is damn good and still the cheapest way to play these games officially. But probably the most notable improvement that I haven't talked about yet is the availability. There are actually more than 8 Super Nintendos at the GameStop I went to this year. Yep, instead of 8, there were 12. Oh god. Alright, well let's get this out of the way right now. The stock for the Super Nintendo has been an honest improvement, that can't be denied. Targets, Walmarts, and other large stores have had quantities of the console in the hundreds for its release date, and there have been 1 or 2 restocks with plans for more throughout the holiday season. The only problem is that while the stock was handled well enough for in-store purchases on its release day, everything else before and after has been problematic to say the least. Depending on your location, the amount of Super Nintendos you can find in your area can go from double to single digits, if there are any at all. You're gonna have to go out of your way to get this thing. Whether it's through tracking sites with constant updates or stalking your local game store like a vampire at a blood bank, it's going to take some work on your part, which just like last year still sucks. And don't even get me started on the scalper prices, which are already double and triple the retail price. Nor the Amazon and Walmart pre-orders, which were made available when they didn't even have the console in stock. It's insane. At the center of all this is Nintendo. They've dropped the ball yet again. Even with more units made available on the release day, the situation is still comparable to the NES from last year, and that's a shame. If you're interested in a Super Nintendo Classic, get it at the retail price if you can. The positive hardware additions, library, and emulation quality are still worth the $80. Any prices substantially higher, though, you can probably avoid as there are many, many other options in the way of emulation these days. What sets the SNES apart is the authenticity for nostalgia's sake and being a simple plug-and-play console. If those aspects are as important to you as they were to me, then I absolutely recommend the purchase. For what it is, the Super Nintendo Classic Edition works well, and I've honestly had a blast going back to the 90s. Well everyone, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and until next time, have a happy holiday.